seat, thank you. Mr. Tisdale is present, all counsel is present, the jury is not.
Thank you for the time. We got updated versions for the witnesses and printed them up with the help of the clerk, and they have them. They're ready to go. The only other issue, Ms. Saldoni had mentioned to me yesterday or the day before something about opening statements. I don't know if you had mentioned anything about it when you were talking about the instruction. I don't know what the court's pleasure is.
If y'all wish to give one, you may. If you don't wish to give one, you're not required to.
All right. Yes, sir. Then I believe we'll be giving one. The defense is going to be giving one, is my understanding.
Yes, sir.
All right. So we'll be giving one.
You're going to speak for the state?
Yes, sir.
And who's going to speak for the defense, so I know who to call?
Judge, I am, and I will be reserving my opening.
Okay. Okay, state ready to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Excuse me. Defense ready to proceed? Okay, when the jury comes in, I don't want anybody doing anything appropriate as far as gestures or comments. Please be quiet in here. Please be quiet. Please be quiet. If you want to talk, that's fine. Just step outside the door to do so. This is obviously a very serious proceeding, so I want everybody to be as quiet as you can. You're free to come and go as you wish, but just please do so quietly so the jury is not distracted. Okay, Mr. Riles, if you want to bring him in, please. Morning, everybody. Thank you. Welcome back. We appreciate you bearing with us. Welcome back. We appreciate you bearing with us. Welcome back. We appreciate you bearing with us. I appreciate your attention and patience with us very much. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have found the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree. The punishment for this crime is either death or life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The final decision as to which punishment shall be imposed rests with the judge of this court. However, the law requires that you, the jury, render to the court an advisory sentence as to which punishment should be imposed upon the defendant. The state and the defendant now may present evidence relative to the nature of the crime and the character, background, or life of the defendant. You are instructed that this evidence, when considered with the evidence you have already heard, is presented in order that you might determine first whether sufficient aggravating circumstances exist that would justify the imposition of the death penalty, and second, whether there are mitigating circumstances sufficient to outweigh the aggravating circumstances, if any. At the conclusion of the taking of the evidence and after argument of counsel, you will be instructed on the factors in aggravation and mitigation that you may consider. Mr. Eisenhower.
Good morning. And thank you all on behalf of myself and Mr. Back et al. And of course Bruce Colton and the people of St. Lucie County for your attention in this case. And as you know, this process you're going to be asked, as the judge has already mentioned this morning, to weigh aggravators and mitigation. And in fact, the state's already proved to you beyond a reasonable doubt the aggravating circumstances in this case. You've already made those findings in your verdict. That the defendant committed an aggravated assault, the victim being Clarence Bennett, just after he had committed contemporaneous with really the murder of Sergeant Morales. That he being Sergeant Morales was a law enforcement officer and he was engaged in his duties at the time, and that the defendant killed him to avoid arrest. These are things that you've already heard and you've already seen that evidence, and in fact you've reached verdicts on those exact facts. You're also going to hear from us this morning victim impact statements. And as the judge told you during jury selection, we talked about a little bit during jury selection, this evidence is about the impact this homicide, the homicide of Sergeant Gary Morales, had on his friends, his family, and our community. It'll show his uniqueness as an individual and the loss his death created. And the judge has already told you that that's not evidence of an aggravating circumstance, but it is victim impact evidence that we're going to put on for you to consider. It does not, should not be used to prove an aggravating circumstance.
Objection, Your Honor, your approach.
Yes.
Hear that those statements this morning, and again, when you hear them, you'll hear about the uniqueness of Gary and the loss that it's created for his friends and his family and our community. As you've heard in this case, since probably the first day a lawyer got up and spoke to you, the death penalty is reserved for the most aggravated and least mitigated murders. You've seen and you will see that this case is exactly that. This is one of the most aggravated and least mitigated murders, and we will ask you to recommend a death sentence for this defendant at the end of the evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. The state caller, first witness, please.
Sheriff Ken Mascara.
Morning, sir. Thanks for bearing with us. If you'll come right up here, one of these nice ladies will place you under oath.
Do you swear upon the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Take,
Sheriff.
Sheriff, let me have to get over here so we can get you on the record.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Please state your name and introduce yourself to the jury.
Ken Mascara. I'm the sheriff of St. Lucie County.
And you have in front of you a prepared impact statement that you would like to read.
Yes, I do.
Would you please read that to the members of the jury?
Good morning, members of the jury. As you can imagine, law enforcement and first responders in general spend more time with their coworkers than the average worker due to their longer shifts, and their lives depend on one another. They are like brothers and sisters. When one of us hurts, we all hurt. With the loss like Gary's, we at the Sheriff's Office have lost a family member. February 28, 2013, the day Sergeant Gary Morales was murdered, was the worst day I have experienced as sheriff, and a day that I will never forget. As sheriff, the thought is always there that one of my own might be killed in the line of duty, and I prayed each and every day that would never happen. When Gary was murdered, there was an outpouring of support from other law agencies, community leaders, and residents who offered condolences and asked what they could do to help. In the days that followed, it had felt as if someone had ripped my heart from me, and I know from the debriefings that were offered to our employees, I was not alone. During those sad days, we as an agency had to pull together to plan a funeral for a fallen comrade, and that is no small task. The weekend following his death, we received calls, emails, and faxes from all over the world offering condolences and support. The entrance to the front of our Midway Road office was covered with letters, flowers, and teddy bears. The crime scene itself became a shrine. Residents from the neighborhood and total strangers would stop and drop off flowers, letters, and tokens of appreciation. The funeral took place on March 4th, 2013, with over 4,000 in attendance, including law enforcement officers represented from Boston, New York, Atlanta, and Maine. From the outpouring of support from so many, I knew that our entire community was suffering, but I did not realize the impact Gary's death had on our community until the funeral procession from Westside Baptist Church to the cemetery began. At Jenkins Road and Okeechobee Road, people were 5 deep, all along the road, young and old, white and black, male and female, standing, saluting, and waving flags. This demonstration of support continued down I-95 with vehicles on the shoulder and people standing next to them saluting. From every overpass, people were standing and solemnly waving flags. When we entered the city of Port St. Lucie, the entire city fleet was on the shoulder waving flags. I would estimate 20,000 people lined the roadways leading to the cemetery, saluting, waving flags, and holding hand-lettered banners. In the months that followed our loss, the community held countless fundraisers and events for the Morales family. The outpouring of support was unbelievable. In May of 2014, my chief deputy and I accompanied the Morales family to Tallahassee, where Sergeant Morales' name was read and etched into the law enforcement memorial wall. Later that month, I traveled to Washington, D.C. to meet Holly and her daughters, Jordan and Brooklyn, for the National Law Enforcement Memorial Service. The loss of Sergeant Gary Morales was the hardest thing that I've ever had to deal with in my entire life, except for the loss of my mother, which was 2 years earlier. Gary Morales was everything I would want in a deputy, and he was the epitome of a true public servant. He was young, smart, committed and dedicated to his profession. He was in great physical condition and a true leader, and always eager to share his knowledge and wisdom with his co-workers to make them better and safe. Due to his youthful appearance and excellent investigative skills, in 2001 he posed as an undercover high school student in not but 2 area high schools in Operation Safe Kid. His efforts enabled the Sheriff's Office to make 21 arrests on 73 charges stemming from drug violations to the removal of serial numbers from a gun. Even today, this operation is talked about in those schools. In another case that highlights his investigative skills and his humor, he was tasked to work with the FBI and DEA on a drug smuggling and money laundering case. After weeks on the case, I received a call from his supervisor that Gary wanted to see me. Usually in large cases like this, when the case agent wants to speak to me, it's not good news. So I met Gary in my conference room where he carried in a large banker's box. When I asked him what was going on, he said he was discouraged working on the case, had emptied out his desk and put all of his belongings in the banker's box, and was coming to me for a transfer. I guess the look on my face startled him, and he immediately opened up the banker's box to reveal $400,000 in cash. He was so proud of his accomplishment, he was smiling from ear to ear, to the point that I had to take a picture of the event, and to this day, that picture sits on a bookshelf in my office. During his time with the Sheriff's Office, he served in Uniform Patrol, School Resource Unit, Criminal Investigations, and SWAT, where he was a team leader of the snipers. He also served with the Special Investigation Unit, the Training Unit, and his promotion on January 18, 2013, he transferred back to Uniform Patrol. Gary earned a reputation for decisive action dealing with crimes in progress, and his investigative skill and compassion for victims of crime, as letters of commendation in his file would indicate. Members of the public, business owners, other members of Treasure Coast and Florida law enforcement agencies commended Gary's professionalism, teamwork, and dedication. There were even letters in his files of those who he arrested. His departmental honors include unit citations 4 times, exceptional duty 3 times, good conduct, and the September 2004 Hurricane Medal. During his tenure with the Sheriff's Office, I don't know how, but he found time to go to college and earn a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in criminal justice. Gary excelled in all of his assignments, but we all know his 2 passions were SWAT and training. He was a firearms instructor, defensive tactics instructor, driving instructor, first aid, and CPR instructor. He set lofty goals for himself, letting many of us know that one day he intended to be the head of the training for the entire agency. He saw the value of bringing new and innovative ideas to training to keep all of us safe. He spearheaded the idea and worked closely with Detective Joe Trevisol to place automated external defibrillators, also known as AEDs for short, throughout the agency and trained us on how to use them. Gary and Detective Trevisol also made a point to bring first aid kits to all of us and train us in how to render first aid in cases of traumatic injuries. His ultimate goal was for each one of us to be safe. Gary possessed all the best qualities we would want in a deputy sheriff serving our public. I always hope my deputies can make a positive impact on their community. Gary, with his infectious smile, was loved by everyone he came in contact with and did that and much more. Few really make an impact on their agencies, but Gary was one of those who did. He was committed to making this agency better and making us better. Every member of the Sheriff's Office was touched by some phase of training that Gary had his hand in. I named our training facility the Sergeant Gary Morales Training Complex. I did so in honor of Gary and in the hope that everyone who trains there will aspire to have an impact on their community, their agency, and their professional development the way Gary did. New deputies who never knew him will now have a chance to say who he was and what he stood for. Often I am asked, what do you remember most about Gary? The answer is the same for many people who know him, that infectious smile and his willingness to help anyone. I lost a great sergeant. The agency lost a great leader. Holly lost a loving husband. Brooklyn and Jordan lost an awesome father. Mr. and Mrs. Morales lost a wonderful son. Brad, Ken, and Brian lost a brother. And the extended Morales family lost someone very special. And our community lost a selfless public servant who was a pillar of our community and always willing to help. And we all lost a hero.
Sheriff, I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 128. Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes, I do.
And when was that taken?
This photo was taken right after Gary's promotion as sergeant, and he's accompanied there by his 2 daughters, Brooklyn and Jordan.
And it's you and Sergeant Morales and his children.
That is correct.
At this time, the state would seek to admit State's 128.
Any other objection by the defense?
No objection.
Objection be admitted as states 128 in evidence.
Like the published picture.
Yeah, if you'll have the missive on there. Folks, will publish or show you this photograph. States 128 was just admitted into evidence. Take a few minutes, take a look at it, take your time, just pass it down to your right.
Your Honor, can we approach that?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Sheriff. You can step down, watch your step, please.
Thank you.
State caller, next witness, please.
Yes, sir. Jeff Whelan.
Mr. Whelan, thanks for bearing with us. If you'll come right over here, one of these nice ladies will place you under oath, sir.
Do you swear upon the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
All right, sir, if you'll step right over there to your left, watch stepping in for me. Just make sure you speak up, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Please introduce yourself to the members of the jury.
Jeff Whelan,
Can you spell your last name for us?
W-H-E-L-A-N.
And if you could, do you also have a victim impact statement you'd like to read?
Yes, I do.
And would you please read that to the members of the jury?
Sure. All right. Back in 1987, when I was 17 years old, I had met Brian Morales, Gary's oldest brother. We met while working together as security officers at the Smith Haven Mall in Long Island, New York. We hit it off right away. We became best of friends within a short amount of time. Brian had introduced me to his family, William and Candy, who I call Mom and Dad, Kenny, Gary, and Brad, who were his brothers. I can remember the first time he introduced me. Mom and Dad treated me as if I were their own. Mom making Brian and I rice and beans after a long evening at the nightclub. Dad reprimanding us when we got in trouble. This was from day one. I felt so close. I was home being at their home. Brian's brothers always treated me as their brother as well. Always so close, always so much fun. As for my relationship with Gary, he was only 10 years old at the time, running around in his tighty-whities, always smiling with those great teeth he had, and the energy of the Energizer Bunny, which, by the way, he never lost. I actually spent a lot of time with him, even though there was a 7-year gap between our ages. How did this happen? Well, Brian and I would go out after work, so I'd always meet up with him at his home, hoping that Mom was cooking another great, phenomenal Spanish meal before we're going out. We all took pride with regards to our personal hygiene. Brian was never ready, so I'd hang out with Gary and Brad. I can remember playing video games such as Atari, Sega, and I believe Nintendo 64. I spent hours sometimes with them before Brian was ready to go, but I never minded. I actually loved it. Mom and Dad eventually moved to Florida, and Gary, Brian, and Ken went into the military. We did lose touch for a bit during that time, but it wasn't long before I decided to move to Florida with my family. For everyone to understand how I feel about the Morales family, this should clarify it. I moved here in 2005. I could have moved closer to my blood relatives who live in Jupiter, Cooper City, and Plantation. However, I did not. I chose to move to St. Lucie West, where my second family resides. I never even thought about it. I am closer to and have been better with them than my own relatives. Once moving here, it was like we never parted. We started right where we left off. This time around was a bit different, though. Gary and I were the best of friends. Gary was the type of person that was very private, but I was one of the lucky ones that he opened up to. I was also a private person, but not with Gary. He knew me inside and out. I was so honored to be his best friend, to be his friend. It made me feel so good that he allowed me to watch his kids. Gary was very protective of them, and he would never let people outside his family do so, but I did. I was also given a key and a garage code, again making me feel special for trusting me with his family and possessions. Gary always was Mr. Sociable. He planned all the get-togethers, holiday parties, and events. We went snorkeling, scuba diving, swimming, golfing, fishing, and bicycling, and so much more, sometimes all in one day. He was the life of the party, always a comedian, always making us laugh and smile. I spent many occasions with Gary on road patrol, ride-alongs, SIU, and the school where he was a resource deputy. I found out how quickly what kind of person Gary was. Very respectful, honest, and loyal to the star he wore. I've personally seen him give hundreds of warnings, not tickets, to people he has come into contact with that committed a traffic infraction. I've seen him help children and go way above and beyond the call of duty by giving these kids a second chance, not arresting them when he could have due to a misdemeanor crime such as simple battery or possession of a controlled substance. He cared about the community and helping everyone he could, even outside work, including me. If not for Gary being there for me day in and day out, I can't honestly say how it would have turned out. I was so emotional, scared to lose my kids, having such depression, and my anxiety was through the roof. He was there for me. Gary saved my life. He explained that I could never lose my kids unless I did something stupid. I listened to him. He had me come to his home every night so he could be sure for certain I was okay. He made me feel good about myself. He called me every day to check on me. He always made time for me, always. I am a proud full-time parent who loves his kids more than anything in the world, and if not for Gary, I'm sure things would have turned out differently, and definitely not in a positive way. I think about what happened to Gary all the time. I relive it almost every day. I put myself in the patrol car with Gary in my mind and try to tell him what's about to happen. I wish I was there to help him like he was there for me, but I wasn't. He needs to be saving and helping everybody. He was always and will be my superhero. He's just missing the cape. In memory of Gary, I will never be scared of anyone wanting to harm me because I decide to honor Gary by having my car, my home, my motorcycle, and my clothing that bear his badge, his name, and his number 166. My children, Jeffrey and Lauren, also miss their Uncle Gary. They've spent so much time with him, enjoying every day together at the pool, barbecues, parties, etc. After Gary had died, Holly showed me all of his achievements. I couldn't believe he did not have them on display or never told me about them. But that was Gary. I was amazed at what Gary had done up until he was 35. Gary has done more in 15 years than most have done in a lifetime. From running triathlons, receiving awards and trophies, and getting his master's degree. He was in the Air Force for 4 years, once in the sheriff's office. He was a road deputy, a resource officer, a detective, a sergeant, and so much more. There was nothing Gary couldn't do. He accomplished all this while being a father, a husband, a brother, a friend, and a best friend, a landscaper, a teacher, a cook, a personal trainer, etc., etc., etc. I don't believe he could have slept more than 2 hours a day, but that's how much energy he had. He was eventually going to get his doctorate and either become a professor or work for the FBI. He would have been great. We lost a great man, a hero, and my best friend that sad day on February 28, 2013. This type of friendship could never be replaced. I may have hundreds of acquaintances and many friends, but none compared to Gary. A big part of my heart and soul has been taken since that day. I keep pictures of Gary in my home, my car, and in my phone. I admit they are hard to look at sometimes, but seeing that perfect smile of his makes me feel at ease knowing he's right here beside me. I still have all of his numbers in my phone. I had his work phone, cell phone, work cell phone, fax, home phone, and if all failed, he knew how to read my smoke signals. Gary will be missed and never be forgotten. His children, Brooklyn and Jordan, are beautiful. I am proud to be part of their lives and promise to always be there as their father was there for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whelan. State caller, next witness, please. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Candy Morales.
Morning, ma'am. Thanks for bearing with us. If you'll come right over here, she'll place you under oath.
Do you swear upon the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Step right over to your left. Please watch step in, please.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Go ahead and pull up close there to the microphone and speak up, and please introduce yourself to the members of the jury.
My name is Candy Morales, M-O-R-A-L-E-S. I'm Gary's mom.
And do you also have a victim impact statement to read to the jury?
Yes, I do.
Please read it.
Yes. It says, ever since we could remember at about the age of 4, we would ask Gary what he wanted to be. He would always say, a cop like my dad. Gary was a people person, always wanting to do for others. As a child, he would give his allowance away to his friends. He was always thinking of others and putting himself last. When he turned 17 years old, he said he was going to the Air Force to be a canine cop. And so he did. He went right after high school. He was a canine cop for 4 years. After the Air Force, he joined the Air Force Reserves and worked at Andrews Air Force Base in the hospital as an EMT, again helping people. Gary also had a funny side to him. Sorry. He also drew people around him with his personality. Always a joker. He was always making the family laugh with his jokes and antics. We miss him, and the family misses him so much. We miss not seeing his big smile when he walks into a room. Our community has surely lost a wonderful and caring person. Our lives will never be the same. We are missing a big piece of our puzzle. We love you, Gary, Mom and Dad.
Thank you, ma'am.
Nice sit down.
Watch stepping down, ma'am.
I'm good, thank you.
State call the next witness, please.
Yes, sir. State calls Holly Morales.
Ma'am, thank you for bearing with us. If you'll come right up here, she'll place you under oath.
Do you swear upon the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Step right there to your left. The record reflects she answered yes.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Please introduce yourself to the members of the jury.
Holly Morales, Morales, Gary's wife.
And do you have a victim impact statement you'd like to read to the jury?
I do.
Please do so.
I've been asked to express how my life and the lives of our daughters, Brooklyn and Jordan, have changed since February 28, 2013. But it's very difficult to put into words how meaningful Gary's life was to our family. Gary and I shared our lives together since the year 2000 and were engaged in 2004. Gary planned a romantic proposal during a ski trip in North Carolina. We stayed in a quaint cabin in the woods with our dearest friends and family. One night, he asked me to take a romantic walk in the woods. After he worked up the courage to ask me to marry him, we strolled back towards the cabin where everyone was waiting to celebrate with us. Out of nowhere, we both heard a loud noise. We had previously been warned about bears, and apparently Gary hadn't forgotten this information. In a moment of panic, he squealed and ran for the cabin in safety, leaving me in his trail of dust. When he reached the cabin, he realized he had left me behind and quickly came to my rescue. This was typical Gary. We did everything together. We went on trips and weekend adventures. Whenever we were home, our door was always open to friends and family to visit. Somehow we managed to squeeze in work as well. Eventually, we were blessed with two amazing daughters, Brooklyn and Jordan. Gary's personality is hard to put into words. He had an energy and a charisma about him that lets you know when he entered a room without him ever speaking a word. You've seen pictures of Gary. His smile radiated warmth. His humor kept us all laughing. This is one of the many things our daughters miss about not having Daddy here. He always keeping them laughing and giggling. His sense of humor was one of a kind. If you ask any friends or family, you'd be hard-pressed to find one who has not been mooned by Gary at one time or another. Halloween is nearly here. Every year we would trick-or-treat in Gary's parents' neighborhood. We have such a large and loving family that it would end up being our family and a couple dozen other extended family and friends. Gary would ride in our SUV with a little trailer in tow for anyone that got tired, keeping an extra set of eyes on all the kids. At Christmas time, we would meet my parents at the mall to see Santa Claus. Gary, sometimes half asleep from just coming off a shift, never missed this and always had the energy to make waiting in line an enjoyable time for all of us, but especially our girls. As much of a man as Gary truly was, he had a froofy side. He would fix their hair just right for the photo because Daddy was quite good at that. Every year, Gary's older brother Ken and his wife Amanda would come over with all the kids to put the lights up outside. Amanda and I would keep the hot cocoa coming. This was Gary's favorite part. Gary kept the kids entertained all the while with his antics, like pretending to drop the lights or fall off the roof. Easter was another special time for our family. We would have dozens of family over to our house and backyard for an Easter egg hunt. Gary and I started the tradition for our nieces and nephews years before we had our girls. Gary was always playful and like a kid himself when it came to the holidays. He would help them hunt for eggs, stealing candy from them in between. For those holidays and other important events, like the first day of school, Christmas programs, the gymnastics meets, the Bring Your Daddy to School Day, and birthdays, Gary was always there. He made us all feel loved, happy, and safe. But Gary will never again be there for those events. Some days are easier than others for me, Brooklyn, and Jordan. I expect holidays and big events to be hard for us, but sometimes the grief comes unexpectedly. Like when I see a spider. You see, Gary was a real man's man, but he became an absolute girl when he saw a spider. He would squeal and jump on the nearest piece of furniture while yelling for me as if the house were on fire. It might be hard to believe, but I was the spider slayer in our house, not Gary. There have been lots of kind and generous people that have stepped in to help family, fellow officers, and friends. However, no one can replace Gary as their father. Others may love our daughters, but only Gary could truly love them as a father does. And Gary is not here to be their father. He will never harass the boys that come to take our girls on dates. He will never walk them down the aisle and enjoy a cheerful father-daughter dance at their wedding. Instead, Gary will instead be lying 6 feet below the earth in his grave. Jordan and Brooklyn miss their daddy for so many reasons. When I asked them what they missed most, they said, Daddy making us laugh. They will never hear another joke from Gary. They will never get tossed in the pool by their daddy. He will never jump out of the closet or pop up from under the covers to scare them. And he will never ever have the chance to simply hold them close, cover them with kisses, and tell them how much he loves them.
Thank you.
If you will call your next witness, please.
Your Honor, the state rests.
Ms. Whelan, do you wish to make an opening statement? Yes, ma'am. If y'all please not discuss the case, we'll have you back shortly. Let me have y'all step into your little room for me, please. Watch stepping down. Excuse. We'll take just a 10 or 15 minute break, Miss Miranda. Please get prepared.